Welcome back to the AusComX Show, the first one for 2024. This is season 4, episode 1. I didn't name it that way; someone else did, and I went with it. So, probably just a few announcements before we start the show. ComX is doing 2 Kickstarters at the moment, and one is presents.comx.studio. I'll just bring that up. That is presents. That's in its last, I don't know, probably 20 hours or something. It was 24 earlier today, so I'm not sure exactly where it is right now, but last day. Get in there, people. Get in there. And of course, we also have running foes.comx.studio. That is a cool little thing about it was described yesterday as spy versus spy on crack. So that's an interesting way to describe it. So that's all I wanted to say, Shaden.
Mate, absolutely stoked to be back after quite a bit of a hiatus from last year. But I'm super, super excited. We've had this guest on tonight's show in the pipeline for a while. We are eventually talking everything connects. So I've been absolutely stoked reading this book. So I'm really, really happy to dive in. So I think without further ado, Shane, we should launch straight into it.
Yes, we shall.
Sounds good. Sarah! Oh my God!
I need some cool dramatic.
Sarah, thank you so much for being on the show. We are so excited to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
We're so stoked to have you on. I've been reading this little gem here in my hot little hands, and I have wanted to speak with you so badly about everything about this book.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm super, super stoked to share with our viewers this little gem. But first and foremost, I think our viewers really want to learn a little bit more about you. Is there can we give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are as an artist, maybe? Where you are from?
Yeah. So I am originally trained as a sculptor, and then I had a car accident which left me in bed, and I turned to the dark arts of comic making and animation. Nice. Because I was stuck in bed, and it's a lot cheaper than sculpture, and I fell in love with it, and I've always liked drawing and writing, but I guess as a comic maker and author, I'm really interested in turning lived experience into comics, and I have a lot of everyday elements, but also questions, conversations with people, but kind of big stuff like philosophy is in there as well. So I think people would possibly say that I'm a kind of thoughtful, humorous creator.
Yes.
Yeah,
I would definitely concur with that. This was something that really surprised me. And I guess if people haven't already read this, can you give us your best elevator pitch?
Oh, okay. So it's been out since October. It's been out since October last year, and I still cannot nail a elevator pitch because it says eventually everything connects, so it's got it all in there, baby. So I tend to tailor what it's about to who I'm talking to. So I would say for this audience, it is 8 interconnected essays, fully illustrated graphic novel about trying to make sense of WTF is going on being a human in the world right now. And obviously caveats of it's set in Australia, it's me, I'm a woman, I'm a white woman, I have privilege, and so there's various things that are kind of caveats of that. It's not a universal experience, it's a very personal experience, which you can see from the nudity. A lot of people have said to me, oh my gosh, why are you naked on the cover, Sarah? And I have to say that was not my design decision. That was actually a decision by the editorial group. Basically, they were like, we need to make it really clear that this comic is not for children because it's got some very explicit adult stuff in it. And that's why I'm naked on the cover. But interestingly, when this is getting published in the US in June, they were like, we can't handle you being naked on the cover. So the cover in the US will have this closed version.
Oh, nice.
Because the US can't handle it.
Classic US.
Right. So, yeah. But
Interesting.
yes, that's my best pitch of the book, and it really doesn't do it justice or explain what it is. Sorry.
No, absolutely. No, I think that just shows that if you are watching and you do not have it, then you need to pick it up so you do understand what's in it is phenomenal, and it is written in such a way that I haven't quite read before. And I was blown away by it. I've received this in the mail not knowing exactly what I was going to get into, and by golly, was I glad that I did get into it. So thank you again, Sarah. I guess moving on, we did talk a little bit about your art on the front cover. How would you describe your art style? Let's start with art style first, I reckon.
Look, art style. I do a range of art styles. Like, I don't know if you can see on my wall, I have some really scrappy, black line drawings with a pen there that's sort of just very brushworky. Then I make paintings, that are very, I guess color is a big thing in my work. Like I do a lot of random sort of, I don't know what this is.
I love it.
I do a lot of random drawings, color. I'm heavy on the line work. I draw a lot of everyday real things. I also draw a lot of fantasy things. And throughout the book, I've got, quite mundane sequences of like us, my family and I going camping. And it's just like the everyday moments of, making food together. And then I have some quite, dramatic, surreal elements like when I was younger, I got bullied and shamed at school. And here is a homage to the Hulk, where I
I remember that one.
Where I turn into Slut Hulk. I can't get this to work on the camera. Where I turn into Slut Hulk, which is, a surreal, emotional moment of me kind of embodying like female rage.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that I kind of move between quite realistic and detailed to surreal to fantasy. Color is definitely my thing.
Oh, Sarah, you're speaking my language. For those good realistic color. So you've talked about art. What about your writing style? How would you describe that? I know you touched a little bit, and it's kind of like these graphic essays. Can you maybe
Sorry, I just saw that comment, Slut Hulk is classic. Sure is. She sure is. My writing style, I still feel a little embarrassed about this, but basically my training with writing is writing essays at school and at art school, and then journaling. So I've always had a very strong journaling practice where I write my feelings, my thoughts, my questions, my complaints. And I think, like, here's an example of, my journal. I have stacks of these and I just, write in them every day.
Wow.
And I think this is kind of a backbone of my writing style. It's also how I keep records of things, which often feed into my work. Like you'll find with this book, a lot of it is autobiographical. Like each chapter is based on things that happened. So I think that kind of a journalist, diaristic voice is very strong in my writing, but I also have the essay voice of, here's my experience, but what does that mean in a broader context with what other people have written or said? And so again, in my book, I'll have me talking about, slut shaming at school, but then I will bring in sort of sex theorists and people who've written about erotica or people who've written about sensuality, to have a dialogue with other cultural voices.
Absolutely.
So I really enjoy that kind of micro my life going to macro, bigger picture, culture, other ideas, kind of that.
Yes. I think you said that beautifully as well. You balance that so well, and it's it's evident that you support a lot of these ideas and stuff like that with all these quotes from scientists, philosophers throughout the book, which I think just supports what you're saying even better. Like, it's so clear, and but I know it's like such it's almost maybe when you first read it, it's like a brain dump of all your ideas and all your experiences. But when you support it with all these like facts and all these, like, I've learned so much from this book, like about the BB bottle and the Beatles. I felt like I had no idea about that, and I thought that was fantastic. Anyway, guys, you got to read to be there. But I just thought that was I just learned so much about like things that I just wasn't expecting. So I think you've paired that beautifully and you've balanced it out really, really well.
Yeah.
But having said that,
you touched on something there that might be worth mentioning, which is I actually really, really like science writing and academic writing. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm neurodivergent and I actually like people explaining stuff. Like, how people go, I hate mansplaining. I actually love mansplaining because sometimes I don't actually know what something means. And so I quite like it. And if someone's telling me stuff I know, I'm just like, yeah, I know. But academic writing can be very didactic of explaining what things are and why. And I actually like that. And so for me, science writing and writing about animals, people, bodies, how things work, I find really useful and interesting. And so to your point, I really wanted to bring that into this work to make it, because I think that writing is great. And a lot of people are like, I hate didactic stuff. But I'm like, maybe it's good. I'm going to weave it in. And so far, no one's complained. So
but weave it in, you did it in such a fantastic way. I think it was really, really entertaining. And it was really informative, and I really enjoyed it. So it was a nice little kind of like a view into your mind, and I really enjoyed it. So, but I guess that also kind of like leads me on to my next question. It is a bit of a big chunker of a question, but what inspired this graphic novel? I know you said that this was the backbone, this journal that you had, but what spurred you on to actually make it a graphic novel?
Yeah, so I think for me, I don't know if it's called story medicine or if I've just made that up, but basically people writing stories, whether graphic novels or not, people writing stories about real hard experiences and their human experience and how they have overcome it or learned to live with it. I've found so powerful for me just as a person. And so, for example, in this book, I talk a bit about being an alcoholic and the journey of that and how difficult it has been, and, all of the kind of secrecy and lying to myself and all this kind of stuff there. And I only came to really understand and realize that about myself through reading other comics that had been written by alcoholics trying to make sense of their behaviors. And it takes a huge amount of vulnerability for people to share these stories. And it really pisses me off when people like, so many people just write about themselves these days and it's so boring, blah, blah. But I'm like, people talking about real stuff can be really, can help save lives.
Yes.
I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that sharing real experiences of hard stuff can be so important for people not feeling alone and for busting shame. And so that kind of thing has been so important to me that I guess in this book, a lot of the very personal stuff that I share is coming from the perspective of other people have shared this kind of stuff with me and it's helped me. And so I want to share back. And already I've had so many comments from people saying, I had this happen. I had that happen too. I felt really alone in that. But reading this makes me feel like it's part of the human experience. And like, obviously this is my experience, but a lot of people have similar stuff, different stuff that's, vaguely similar. And to me, there's some real power in that. And I call it story medicine, which is just being honest and sharing about stuff in a way that is not doom and gloom, but it's more about being real, about struggle and finding ways through it, being a human.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, I think. And I like that term. I'm going to use story medicine. I love it.
That is cool.
If it's a thing for something else. People do it, graphic medicine, people making books about their lived experience in medical institutions and stuff like that. And with illnesses, I feel like that is an example of what I'm talking about, which is really getting into what does it feel like to go through this or have this, and like, and how do you live? Like what works, what doesn't work? You know, like all that stuff.
I think it would be really comforting for someone to know that they're not alone in that situation either. So I think that's wonderful, especially just that there's more things like this on shelves. So that's awesome. But I just noticed something, a little funny thing. So I know in the book you also reference how much you love stripes and how much you love wearing them. I'm so glad she's wearing stripes, and it is literally littered through her book, even when you said before, when you said for the version you'll be clothed on the front cover adorning your beautiful stripes. So that's so good to see. I love it. I love some continuity. But also,
I didn't intend that, so thank you for noticing.
Of course. But just looking at these illustrations, like flicking through the entire book, I just love how raw it all is, really. How long have you been drawing for?
I've been drawing since I was a baby. As soon as I could hold a pen, I've been drawing. I've just always enjoyed moving, and I think like I did a comic that's in a book that's called Growing Up Disabled in Australia, where I talk about trying to navigate school, being dyslexic and not knowing, and being neurodivergent and not knowing, and having a learning disability and stuff. And for me to just like sit down and not be a nuisance, my mum realized that me holding a pen and drawing the pen, which we call dancing the pen, because otherwise I'd be like, you're doing this, which is disruptive. And for me, this is like a laser way of focusing, hyper energy. And so I've always been drawing. And that, like, I work as a graphic recorder, so I take notes. I do big live visual drawings at conferences and stuff, and people always ask, how did you get into that? And part of that was just like I had to write and draw to focus at school, and so I've been practicing that ever since then. And I kind of can't not take notes. Like even now talking to you, I'm like doing doodles and little things here on my desk. So it's just how I operate.
I like the dancing. I really like that. As someone who works within the allied health industry, your references to like neurodivergence is something that really hits in my life as well as in my career. So it's nice to see that being acknowledged, I think, in a piece of work like this. So yeah, I think it's really, really
that's
interesting.
Actually something that like friends of mine who are, various different types of neurodivergent have come and said, patted me on the back saying, Sarah, that's a very neurospicy book. It's very structured in a funny way that a lot of people are like, why is the book like this? Why is it connected in this way? Like, what's the point? Whereas I think for people who have ADHD or autism or, mental illness or, various brain differences, I think that it makes a bit more sense to people like that. Is the feedback, I mean, it's a small selection of people who've said that, but that's the feedback that I've had, is that like a lot of people like, that my brain does that too. I'm going down here and then it goes here and then it goes there and then it comes back,
Absolutely. And I think that again touches onto the thing that that it's nice to know that you're not alone in that situation, kind of thing. And you've got someone to look up to, especially for kids, or I know this is probably not a kid's book, but I mean, in that instance, it's nice to know that, you're kicking goals. So I think that's really, really fantastic. And I guess that kind of leads me on to my next question. Is that probably what inspires you to draw, would you say? Or is it just part of the process?
Part of it. I find it really hard to write without drawing. Like a lot of people are like, why is this a graphic novel, not a prose book? And it's just, I don't really know how to write without drawing, because there's so much I want to communicate in words that I can't. So I need a drawing. And then there's lots of things that when I just draw, I'm like, it's not specific enough. It needs words. So I'm just like, comics is my jam, because that's what it is,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I see. Yeah, I can totally see that. Oh my gosh. So what would you say is your strengths when it comes to creating something of this magnitude? What would you say what strengths do you draw upon? Would you say?
Well,
Or
I
that
would
you-
say quite literally, I'm very strong. So I'm a weightlifter. I have a lot of stamina.
Yeah.
So I feel like
Yeah.
I'm able, like literally, I'm a strong drawer where I have more strength to draw longer because I lift weights, which is actually why I lift weights. People are like, why do you do that? It's like because I was getting fatigue and RSI. And one of the best ways to manage that is to actually just get stronger. So
Yeah.
my strength of drawing is big strong.
Yeah.
But I would also say that I'm very playful in my style. Like I'm quite free and easy with drawing. Like I'll just draw. I'm not afraid to draw brain farts. You know, like I'm not a perfectionist. I enjoy lines. I enjoy just putting pen to paper and just doodling. And so I think for me, that means I can come up with quite novel ways of drawing or representing things that are not conventional. Like I don't have quite the same comics making ideas as other people because I'm kind of just doing my own thing, which is a good and a bad thing. Like any strength is also a weakness. It's like my friend Chris Gooch, like I love his comics so much. He's so cinematic. His work is like watching a film because
Yeah.
he has all of the distinctions of how to set up scenes in ways that are cinematic. I don't have that. Whereas I'm able to draw kind of more diagrammatically or something, which connects with graphic recording as a profession. So I'm able to connect things in interesting ways that are non-paneled and non-cinematic. But I also wish that I could do cinematic work. Maybe one day. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, horses were courses. But there was one reference that you did have in, I think it was the chapter What Makes Me and Me, I believe was. And it was where you draw the parallel between perhaps, I'm not sure what side it is, I always get mixed up, but your left and your right side, and how creative one side is and how logical the other one is, and how you've kind of like harnessed both to really like be as successful as that's the one. That is it. I love that page. I think that is so clever. And I think something that also kind of resonated with me, because I'm such an organized person, but at the same time, like whenever I'm writing or whatever, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people can probably agree with this, is that when you're making something, it just seems like such a mess in your head. But I think that's the beauty of it as such, without saying being too pretentious or being too cliche, I guess. But I think that was illustrated really well in this book, and something that was really interesting delving into. So again, it was nice to know that I wasn't the only one. So
I feel like I oscillate between playfulness and then kind of being analytical. And that sort of comes in and out in various ways in the chapters. And like some chapters are more about ideas, and so they are more analytical, and then other chapters are more about the experience of, particularly the chapter about sensuality is very much about being embodied, and so it's much more sumptuous, you know. And so I guess that like I kind of push and pull those in different directions depending on the subject matter.
Absolutely. Okay, well, you've kind of drawn on some of your strengths. I want to know if there's any kind of skills that you've been currently improving, maybe recently. Is there anything that you've done?
Yes, I'm laughing because I am dyslexic, and even as an adult, I still have funny word challenges. And so I feel like the more that I write, like even just making this book, I feel like my writing ability has improved significantly just through writing this. And so that for me is a huge win. Is just like being able to not spell things terribly, and also understanding word structure better, and also working with Erica Wagner, who's an amazing Australian comics publisher. She helped me understand grammar a bit better because she was editing my book, and it was a mess. She had a huge job. But I have learned a little bit of how to use commas and a little bit more about the order of words, and it's been drilled into me a bit more. So I feel like I'm definitely getting a little bit better at that. I guess at the moment, post-book, I am really interested in kind of freeing up my drawing style a little bit more. So I'm doing much more kind of spontaneous, free drawings. This whole book was drawn digitally on my iPad. And for this work, because it's about thinking and about detail, I did want the drawings to be quite precise and quite detailed. But for now, I'm kind of in a different mode, and I want to muck around a bit more, be a little bit more messy and free. So that's sort of what I'm working on now, is more gestural.
Yeah, nice.
playful
Absolutely.
stuff.
Working with that red side of the brain, so to speak, from your book.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. So having said that, like, you're currently being a lot more freer in your drawing. What is something that you really enjoy drawing at the moment?
Oh, something I've been loving is just doing these, like, really they're not bad. I'm just trying to find one that's not terrible. But basically every morning when I journal, I write words and then I do a drawing. And I've just been enjoying, like, doing random drawings. Like, I'll occasionally draw, like, whoops,
Amazing. I
steps
love
with cactuses. And then I'll draw a starfish with an eye.
Oh, cool.
I love it so much.
And they're drawn in a composition book with just my pen and watercolor, and for no reason other than having fun. Because after doing a huge project where I was literally a robot of a comic artist, like literally like 8 to 12 hour days, like clock in, work, go for a walk, work. You know, I think it's really important for me to have time to just play and make art for no reason other than the joy of it.
Yes,
you know.
absolutely.
So that's a really important kind of phase that I'm in. And people ask me, oh, what's next? What's your next book? And all this kind of thing. And look, to be honest with you, I'm quite burnt out. Like, this book is 8 years in the making. When I finally got my publishing deal, it was a year sprint. And basically both of my editors were like, Sarah, you're doing 2 years of work in 8 months. Are you going to die? And I was like, no, I can do it. I can draw so strong. I do weights. But it's kind of crumpled me, to be honest. It just everyone who's done a big graphic novel says this. It's like it takes the wind out of your sails because it's such a draining thing. But I'm definitely feeling that. And then doing like 3 months of publicity and launches and travel off the back of that, I have pushed myself beyond my limit. So I am recharging. So when people say, what is your next piece of work? I say it is resting well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, well, having talked about some of your favorite things to draw, and mind you, one thing that I just noticed, I love how you've drawn in like a composition book, because I can literally hear the texture, and I love it. It's like music to my ears.
It's like crunchy. They're cheap. They're so cheap.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
I'm actually very inspired by Linda Barry's work, because she has all her comics on composition lined paper. And there's something for me that I love about it, because it's like, you're not meant to draw on lined paper. Lined paper is for words. But it feels like you're being naughty, like you're drawing in your notebook at school or something. And I enjoy that.
And like to literally pull a quote out of that same page that we had up before, between the two parallels of your brain, it's like break the rules kind of thing. Yeah. And your logic side of the brain saying, no breaking rules. We love rules. So I love that. I think that's great. So what would you say is your favorite medium to work in? You said that you've worked with iPad, and you've also worked in your composition book, Naughty You. Yeah. What would you say is your favorite? Or do you have not?
I love my Lamy Safari fountain pen. I also love my Pentel brush pen. These are my two most favorite. I
have the same brush pen, and I love that brush pen. That thing.
Hold on 1 second.
Sarah, we have so much in common.
And I love this watercolor set that is called Kuretake. It's a Japanese watercolor set that's just I love this. I have this on my desk, and I just use these aqua pens and just watercolor with them, and I love it in my crappy notebook. I love that. It's very fun, but I also love working digitally on my iPad because it's so easy to change things if you stuff things up. And I use Procreate to make my stuff. Oh no, it's not charged.
Oh no.
No. Anyway, the magic happens on this bad boy. I don't know if you can see, but I haven't changed the screen cover since I started, and you can see this big circle. That's all the work that went into making the book. I wore out that part of my screen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That surface can tell stories.
Awesome.
Well, having talked all about your art and your like creativeness, I want to kind of turn it to like some other things that inspire you, but I kind of want to ask, what would your favorite genre be to read, comic wise?
I do like a lot of fiction. Like, I don't have a favorite genre. Like, I love a lot of nonfiction graphic novel. I have a stack of graphic novels here to talk about.
Oh, do show and tell.
So I will batch them. So these are two nonfiction Australian graphic novels that I love. Still Alive by Safdie Ahmed, and Our Members Be Unlimited by Sam Wallman. I love both of these. I feel like they're culturally really important works. They're very informative. They're very moving and harrowing. So yeah, love those. But here are some fiction books that I love. Stone Fruit by Lee Lai, and The Making of by Brecht Evans.
Ooh.
I think he's Belgian. I hope I haven't got that wrong. And Lee Lai, I think, is in the US or Canada. I'm so sorry, I forget Lee. Originally in Australia, maybe lives and works across continents. But yeah, these are both fiction. Love them. And then we've got Lynn Barry, who, I don't know what you would call her books, educational, how to make comics, you know.
Yeah.
I love her work. I feel like if you're creatively stuck, her books are just so freeing and wacky, that I find that they really help, and full of amazing comics drawing exercises. Yeah, so if you're ever stuck, there's so many great exercises here of like how to generate ideas for stories, for characters, how to get in touch with your creativity. So I think that, like, yeah, Linda Barry is like a living genius, who I return to on the regular. And then this is another graphic novel I love called Unflattening by Nick Sousanis, which is about ways of seeing. It's very academic. I think it's his thesis turned into a graphic novel. Wow. So it's very meticulous, and yeah, I love this too. So those are just some of my favorites. I have many, many more. Yes. I have a bit of a book addiction. Like, it's my kryptonite. It's like I love books. I love just sitting near them and reading them. I have too many.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's a very, very similar kind of story for a lot of artists. I think we can't always just pick one favorite. It's like your favorite child, I guess. I kind of want to do like a bit of a change of pace now. This is a kind of a quirky question, but I'm quite interested to see if you do have one. If you don't, maybe. Do you have any funny quirks or rituals while you're creating? Like, for example, for myself, and if anybody in the comments has something similar, please tell us, because for me, when I'm drawing, I cannot draw unless I'm listening to music. Music has to be constantly playing, or else I just can't get into it. But I'm curious to see, like, or hear, what are some of yours, maybe?
Oh, I have a lot of quirks. How much time do we have?
Love it.
All right. Okay, so with writing, I find writing sitting at a desk really hard unless I'm writing in my journal. If I have to type words, I have to actually get on my iPhone like this, and I have to walk up and down the street and type into my phone, because I literally, if I open my computer and sit there and I'm like, right, I'm going to write a thing now, my brain just goes, this is boring.
Yeah.
No, you're not. So I have to do all these weird little workarounds because I get stopped in my tracks.
Wow.
So that's one thing. Similarly to you, when I'm doing the drawing side of things, I need music. I often watch TV shows while I'm drawing. I need some other stimulation going on. For whatever reason, podcasts don't work particularly well for me, but music and TV shows or movies, yes. What are other quirks? I also have so dance is actually a very big part of my creative process. So particularly writing a book like this, when I get working with heavy topics or things that are a bit hard to synthesize, I'd often need to just stop and then go and dance to figure it out.
Yeah. The joy of movement.
That's so cool.
Movement. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It's funny that you said, sorry, just going back to your, like, how you walk and you type on your phone. It's so funny to me because I'm similar. However, I can never really think of what I want to put down onto paper unless I'm like in my car. So if I ever get like blocked and I'm driving in my car, my mind is like, I mean, obviously, be cautious while driving and be present, but at the same time, my mind is like, oh, this is something that could like happen in my comic or blah, blah, blah. And then as soon as I get home, all thoughts out of my head empty. And I'm just like, that's so interesting that you're kind of similar, but like walking is like something that you do that stimulates.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, walking. Also in the shower, I get a lot of ideas in the shower. Oh, sorry, my husband would tell me to say this. A lot of parts of my book early on, I wrote in the bath, and I would actually use the tile. Like, we have big tiles on the wall, like big like that. And I would actually sit in the bath, like writing and drawing and stuff with my notebooks. And then I would stick up Post-it notes on the tiles, and they'd be like panels. Yeah. And so our bathroom turned into this weird like comics making space. And it was just like, how it happened is I just got really stuck. And then I was like, I have good ideas when I'm in water. I have good ideas in the shower. Okay, I'm going to hop in the bath and try writing in the bath. And it worked. So
it's awesome.
Does your husband also draw, or was it just like an exhibition of Sarah in the bathroom?
So he most of his kind of inputs were text suggestions or verbal, like talking stuff through.
Okay, yeah.
But he was definitely a like shadow editor. Also, he's in the book a lot. His butt is in the book, which a lot of his colleagues have bought the book and they're like, Jason, it's your butt. So yeah. But I have another quirk with writing, and what is that? I was going to say it, but I've forgotten what it is. Post-it notes.
Yeah. Exhibition of Sarah. Love
yeah,
it.
Actually, to exhibition of Sarah. Yeah, to that point, I also have a thing called aphantasia where I don't make mental pictures of stuff, and so I have to write and draw stuff down. And a big thing that happened to me is I'd be working away on my graphic novel and blah, and then I'd close my iPad, put it on my desk, and then be like, I haven't made anything. I haven't done anything. And I'd panic. And then I realized I actually needed to print out the pages as I made them and stick them on the wall so that I could hold in my brain what was happening, because it wouldn't stick. So yes, that point of exhibition of Sarah, my house literally turned into a like second brain during the making.
Wow.
Literally on all the walls. Because I just didn't know how else to get it made.
Oh my gosh. I love that. I think you definitely have to turn that into something, exhibition of Sarah. I want to toot my own horn. But I've got this. Okay, so in your book, one of my favorite chapters, I believe, is something somewhat sentimental and something that I really like related to, because I too am a very sentimental person. I hold on to anything and everything that has some sort of memory attached to it. But there was one particular quote that really hit the nail on the head for me. And that was actually by Merlin Sheldrake, if I'm pronouncing that correct. He's a biologist reference in your book in this particular chapter. And he says,
I call him Hot Mushroom Man.
Ooh, okay. I can get that. I get that. For those of you watching at home, this is said Hot Mushroom Man. Is that right?
Yeah.
Probably I can help you draw the parallels between him. Yeah, he's a good looking lad, and you've hit the nail on the head definitely with the illustration. I'd say I do like a curly mop if I do say so myself. But his quote that you reference here is all life forms are processes, not things. And I was like, that's really profound and something that I've never really like thought of in that way, which actually leads me to my next question, which is, if you can you probably like guide us through like a step-by-step of the processes that were like taken in making this book? What were some of the steps that you did?
Oh yeah. Okay. So to begin with, I was very happy back in 2015. I was very happy making short comics. I was like, I'm a short comics lady. That's all I will ever do. No worries. But then I found out about the Comic Art Workshop, which is this workshop that's for ambitious graphic novels that's run for a few years now. And the night before the applications were due in 2015, I heard about it and I was like, oh, who are all these cool comic artists? Oh, I want to go to that. Reading terms and conditions, you need to have an ambitious graphic novel. And I'm like, oh, okay, I've got to come up with something. I've got 24 hours. And so I just scrapped together this like absolute nonsense idea for a book that was just stream of consciousness. And you had to write a letter to the, person they'd nominated. So I wrote a letter saying, I want to make this comic and it's going to look like this, da, 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 da. I thought I'm not going to get in because it was really half-assed, basically. But they actually thought, oh, this shows some promise. And so I actually got accepted. And then I was basically like, oh, crap, I need to make a thing. So I came up with a very rough, I'm just looking at my shelves to see if I've got the initial version. I cannot see it. Nope. Okay. So that was 2015. I had a very rough idea of a graphic novel. I ended up taking a huge piece of butcher's paper with post-it notes of like, I'm going to write about all these things. I have no idea how to make a graphic novel. And at that 2-week workshop, I met all these other graphic novelists who actually talked about how you make a graphic novel. And I found it so inspiring connecting with this amazing community of Australian and international comics makers that I was like, and that's where I, made really good friends with people like Josh Santospirito and Chris Gooch and Finn McCabe and Pat Grant, Elizabeth McFarlane, like all Campbell White, like all these really great comic artists. And, I was like, okay, this is going to be hard, but I'm going to do it. So I had the little fire in my belly lit. But then I realized that making a long book is really hard, particularly if you're making a weird book about living, that there's a lot you want to put in and you're not sure how to do it. So then that took 8 years and I realized I needed to do a lot of research and basically self-work. The more I looked at stuff, the more I was like, oh, I'm an alcoholic and I'm lying to myself. I need to sort this out because this is getting in my way. So there was a lot of like personal work that I needed to do to sort of get to a space where I could write. So that took 8 years. I went to the Comic Art Workshop multiple times to workshop my work. So I would say that having that creative community has been fundamental to building my confidence, learning skills, understanding how other people work, and, parts of that are really useful to me, getting their feedback. And then I started trying to pitch the book in 2020 and realized that people didn't want it. And so I had the unpleasant experience of just rejection after rejection after rejection. The thing that did come through to support me was I applied for lots of arts grants and I got some very generous arts grants from different arts bodies in Australia. So that really helped me to like get time to research, write, draw, keep building it. Then I would keep pitching it just like, nah, what the hell is this? Go away. I was very sad. Finally, an agent approached me in 2022. So I'm represented by Jacinta de Marseille Management, and my agent is Danielle Binks. She is a hardcore comics enthusiast, which we need more people like her in Australia. But she like adores comics, fights for comics. She's a legend. She managed to get me, putting a proper pitch together. We made a video. I made the first chapter of the book I fully made, and we pitched with that, along with kind of synopsises of the other ones. Still, rejections. They were a little bit more positive. They were more, this book is really interesting and cool, but who is going to buy it? Who's the market? Who reads graphic novels? And it was very like, this is a risk for us, so we're not going to publish it, sorry. But then, and this is a true story, I was so like despondent at that point that I was like, I put so much time and energy into this and it's not going anywhere. I've got other stuff I want to do. I'm going to give up. And I actually went away to the Dandenongs in the mountains here, and I went and chopped wood because I was just angry and I wanted to like smash some stuff with my axe. so I chopped wood, and I was calling friends who've given up on graphic novels, and commiserating. And I'm like, how do you let go of it? How do you grieve a book? Blah, 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 blah. How do you not feel like a total loser because no one wants to publish it? And have I wasted my years of my life? And yeah, while I was there, I got a phone call from my agent, just as I'm splitting that piece of wood, I get the phone call, Danielle saying, "Oh, Sarah, Nikia Louie from Joan wants your book. They want it now. Get on the phone right now." And that was like a really big turning point for me where, yeah, she was just like, I love this book. My imprint, Joan, is all about publishing books that would otherwise not get made because they're a bit different. They're a bit adventurous. They're a bit, unexpected. Yeah. And I had so much creative freedom with her because it's not a comics publisher. They've published poetry, short stories, other kinds of things, but not graphic novels. And what that meant, though, is that I needed to contract my own editorial team. Which it was wonderful. I managed to get Erica Wagner to be my editor and Hilary May Harris to be my creative director. And she's been an editor for the Nib in the USA. So she has amazing comics experience as an editor. So I kind of had my dream team to work with on this book. And I made it chapter by chapter, and they edited it as we went. And, they trusted me as well. They'd be reading stuff going, "Sarah, where are you going with this?" But at no point did they go, "Oh, it's not working." They were just very like, "Okay, this is interesting. Where are you going?" And then they were like, "Oh, nailed it." So yes. Yeah, I had a lot of leeway and creative freedom and support, which I feel like for a book like this is exactly what I needed. Whereas I know with other comics publishers, they're very much like, give us the entire type script, then give us the entire thumbnails, then give us the entire colored. And it's much more process heavy with lots of feedback, whereas mine was more editorial at the end. So that's basically how it got made.
That's so wonderful to hear, the fact that it was like a kind of a story, and wood chopping of all things as well intertwined. That's so amazing. Makes for a very good story, that's for sure. But I guess out of those steps, I guess, that it took you to get to where you are now, what was your favorite and what was your least favorite?
Oh, look, I know that. Well, what was my favorite? My favorite was just finally getting a publisher. Like that moment, like I was so, and that's why I did 2 years worth of work in 8 months, because I was so ready to get going. I was just like, yes. So that was just like such an exciting moment for me, where I was like, yes, I've got my foot in the door. I can make it. And a lot of people say, "Oh, but Sarah, you can self-publish." And it's like, yes, but I couldn't have afforded to self-publish a book like this. This is very deluxe, and this would have cost me so much money. And I don't have the distribution networks, and I don't want to do that. It's so much work. I have done it. I do it as a zine fair goer, But
Yes.
for something like this, I needed a publisher. So getting one was my favorite part. Yes,
Yes.
good for the soul. Yes, exactly. My least favorite part is just rejection. Look, any creative endeavor inevitably has rejection. And I think that you need to be able to just be resilient, and like you get rejections and it sucks and then you keep going. But I do feel like people don't talk about rejections enough or something, and how to deal with it, and like how much they hurt, I guess.
Yeah. How did you with the reaction, the rejection? Sorry, how did you deal with that in the moment? If you don't mind me
Chopping wood.
No, I
was
just
there anything else that helped along the way with perhaps like friends, or you did say that you spoke to a lot of people who had let go of books, and I think that was really interesting that you touched on how to let go of a book. That was, I don't think I've ever heard, or I guess I've never really thought of fathoming that idea. I guess that's such a that seems like such a sad idea, and I can't imagine how you would have been feeling in that process.
I feel like it just happens. It's like anyone that has an ambition for something, like could be having children, having a child, or having a house, or build, I don't know, any kind of project can fail. And it's like, what do you do with that failure? And exactly to your point, I feel like talking with your comrades, with your other comics makers, and kind of commiserating is really important, because even people who seem really successful have a bunch of failures and have a bunch of, being told that their work is shit. And I just, talking to people, feeling sad for a few days, and then, regaining a bit of courage. And I guess for me, a little bit of it was like, I'll show you. You said no one will buy. You said no one will buy this book. I bet a few people will buy this book.
Totally get that. I get that. Yeah. I've definitely.
But I feel like for any creative endeavor, rejection is part of the landscape, and just finding ways to digest it and not let it take you down is important. That said, constructive criticism can be really helpful and is worth listening to and taking on board. But just like I had a rejection from my most favorite publisher in the US, who I won't name, and they basically said, it's good but doesn't wow me, sorry.
Wow.
And I chewed on that for so long, of like, are they saying that it's like kind of good but just not good enough? And it's like, so I had this whole thing of like, it's not good enough, and it's like, whatever.
It's so hard to process from someone
as well,
But I think that says a lot about your resilience, and I think as a collective of creative people, I think I'm sure, like, many other people have faced this kind of challenge in their own projects. And I guess it says a lot about the creative collective and how resilient we really are, because it's definitely no easy path for us to go down. Like, the fact that people put basically their hearts on the line for a project that they really believe in. I think this says a lot about how creative people are. I think it's not always highlighted. People always say, "Oh, you just draw pretty pictures, man. That must be easy," kind of thing. And it's like, well, no, not really. You don't see half of it, what's behind scenes, just like what you've told us with that particular story. And I think that's something that should really be highlighted a lot more. Again, it's nice to know that, perhaps people aren't the only, they're not alone in that particular situation. So I think you're right in saying that there should be more talk around that particular topic, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I also feel like the point there with people who are starting out in comics or publishing, like I had a really interesting conversation with an agent and a publisher about, and they don't work in graphic novels, they work in, bigger publishing. But she was saying how a lot of people try to fit market. So they try to make a product, a book that is highly saleable, based on what people read and what people buy and all this kind of stuff. And she said that as much as that seems to logically make sense, it never works. And she's been an agent for like 40 years. And she just said the key thing with creative works is that the creator has to be in love with the project. Like, you have to be committed to and in love with it, because that is the thing that will keep you going, that will drive you, that will give it life. Whereas if you're trying to meet market, it's just, I mean, I'm sure some people do and it works well. I mean, I think of people like Stephen King who are very kind of formulaic in what they do, and that seems to be quite successful. And he seems to enjoy it, that kind of thing. But more often than not, it's like you have to believe in yourself and your work at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And so really investing in that and working on something that you enjoy, that you would want to make regardless of what people say. You know, it's like playing that game in your mind of like, let's say this is a big failure out in the world and people don't like it or whatever. Do I feel proud of it because I did my best work and I did something that I was interested in?
Absolutely.
And that's a really important thing to, because I think for me, when I get young artists coming to me, they're like, oh, I really want to do this style of work because it's cool and it seems to be popular, and you know, and I'm like, do what thing is calling to you. Like, don't feel heaps of peer pressure to make it look exactly like whatever, because it's like people have their own unique take, view, methodology or whatever. And I feel like that can be a more empowering thing to explore than.
Absolutely. And I think that it just spurred me on. There's a famous quote, I'm not sure who it's by, but no one can do you like you can. And I think that's something that just kind of related to that entirely. So exactly. Yeah, for sure. I think, I'm so glad that we touched on that, because it's not always a topic that is always touched on. So I'm glad that it maybe shed some light for maybe our viewers tonight as well. So, but changing pace a little bit, I know a little bit earlier in the show, you did mention about your book launch and that you did a bit of travel. Can you talk us a little bit more about that particular part of the book? That seems really exciting.
Yeah, so as in my work as a graphic recorder, I work on events and I do a lot of kind of project management, event management sort of stuff. And as much as I enjoy book launches in the bookstore that are small, intimate, I feel like they can sometimes get a bit same old. And I was like, for me, with this book being a strange book, I wanted to have an unexpected book launch. So I invested in a big book launch here in Melbourne. I connected with the Science Gallery, that is like a new, really kind of experimental gallery space. They actually have them all around the world. It's a network of science galleries that are all about art and science together. And so I wanted to have a launch at the Science Gallery, and I had a whole team of people there to help me with the launch and catering and music and all this kind of stuff. And the big secret for the launch was so I've mentioned dance a few times. I love dance. I'm actually a terrible dancer. I cannot learn steps, but I like to wiggle around. And I've had this dream ever since I was probably 5 years old of like being on stage and doing a dance performance in front of people and then being like, wow. But I just felt like I could never do that because I'm not actually a good dancer. But I was like, actually I was driving my car listening to a song, and the song just like, I could feel it in my body, and I could feel moths, because I don't see stuff, but I could feel like moths moving and like fire and moths. And I was like, I know, I'm going to do a surprise dance number at the beginning of the launch of my book. And so for 2 months prior, I made moth costumes all out of like repurposed materials, cardboard and stuff. And I have 2 friends who are like really well-trained clowns, so they do kind of theatrical clown performance, and they're also dancers. And so I worked with them, top secret. I usually like to share a lot, but this was top secret, and we worked on this dance performance that only had like 4 different dance moves, because that's all my brain could handle. But we had the stage set up with like a fire, and we like came on and we danced, and then we like gyrated on the fire, and then we came and annoyed people in the audience. And that was, I love that so much, because so many people were sitting there expecting a book launch, and suddenly dance thing and everyone's dressed as moths, and I was a moth the entire night. I didn't take my costume off. I was just a moth the entire time. And I think for a lot of people, I'm like, so what are you doing, Sarah? But I was living my 5-year-old dream.
Exactly.
That's
And I think
amazing.
that is the best book launch story that I've ever heard in my entire life, hands down. And I'm so glad you tied in something that you see not only in the beginning of the book, but also ties in with the very final page of your book. Not to give any spoilers or anything like that, but perfect. You could not have tied those two loose ends together any better.
So one of the chapters is about a camping trip and bogong moths being attracted to a fire, and so that's the kind of reference for the book launch. But yeah, so that was a kind of spectacular book launch. And then I also went to Canberra and did a book launch there, and did book signings and stuff. And then also went to Sydney and did a book launch there, and a bunch of signings and interviews and stuff like that. And then I'll be going to the US later in the year for the US leg of things.
Whereabouts are you going to?
Whereabouts in the US? Oh, I can't say yet. I can't say yet.
Off limits. All right. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. That's so exciting, though.
Yeah, but it sounds really stupid, but like one of my favorite moments of this whole book thing was dancing badly as a moth for 4 minutes on stage. That was just such a childhood dream, and like, I feel so happy.
I'm so glad that like childhood dream got to like come into like fruition. I think that's so amazing. But speaking of motifs within your book, I really wanted, as you can see, I've done a lot of annotating, and I wanted to go through some of my favorite bits of your book, starting off with the first chapter of your book, which is titled, can you pronounce it for me, because I'm terrible.
Yes.
What is
so joie de vivre, which means the joy of living. So it's French, and it basically means like, like someone who's eating food and going like really enjoying, really enjoying the food, or and to me, like when I look at a dog, to me dogs are an embodiment of joie de vivre, which is that they are. Well, this is not true because some dogs are self-conscious and anxious, but a lot of dogs, particularly at the dog park, are just running amok, having a great time, not self-conscious, sniffing butts, picking up sticks, catching balls, living their best life, and it fills my heart with so much joy. So that's what happens.
I'm so glad that you could pronounce that, because I never took a lesson in French, unfortunately. But one of my highlights, which is so interesting because it's such a kind of like a juxtaposition that you put in here, which is a reference to Sisyphus, which is one of the most interesting tales that I've ever seen, and you paired it in such a great way. To give reference to viewers, you reference your cat's litter box and how every day, which exactly the page I'm looking at right now, every day is a day of scooping poop, and on the next page, you've then paired it with the tale of Sisyphus, which one too many. Yes, that's the page.
That's
and when
awesome.
I was like, that is genius. It was that was just like a nice little, and like not many people that I talk to really know about Sisyphus, and I think it's just such an interesting concept that for those who don't know, Sisyphus was banished, and as part of his what's the word? As part
punishment.
Of the consequence, was that he had to push up this massive boulder up a hill for all of eternity, and it kind of feels like that sometimes when you've got a cat and a kitty litter tray. So I love that.
I jump in and add a fun fact that's just really random to me, which is part of why I got a lot of rejections in the US about this book. Number one comment was, "There's too much shit up front." They were like, "Can you remove the shit?"
No, there's not enough. I love it so much.
Do people not have animals in your life, or children, or like a body? That's part of life. Oh my gosh, calm down.
I love it. Going straight towards near the middle of the book, obviously We Were Here was another huge chapter for me. This particular chapter really touched on like sentimental values as such, like you go through letting go of things and stuff like that, and that's something that I've always struggled with, and I just thought that this was such a beautiful chapter. Seeing things. Now, this is something that I really want to quickly ask all our viewers. You referenced so many cool stuff in here that I forgot. And you touched on how, like, at the beginning, your process started back in 2015. This particular page, for everyone looking at home, I don't know if you can see it, but you referenced the 2015 dress. And I want to know, what do you see? And people who are like seeing this from home, what do you guys see? Do you see black or blue or white and gold? What do you see, Sarah?
So when that went viral back on the internet in 2015, because I went to art school, I know how color works. So I was like, it's black and blue. Yeah, but
you're right.
People were not wrong in arguing that it was white and gold, because it looks like that as an image. But as an actual object, there are enough cues in there to know that it's probably black and blue. So the actual physical dress was black and blue. So that argument was solved.
So that was your logical kind of side of your brain, like talking. You're like, color theory. Now, Sarah, we know this. We know this one. So I love that. I think that's so good. I guess a few others kind of sprung to mind because this chapter is all about like how people perceive things, whether or not you come from different backgrounds or different cultures and things like that. And I think that was tied in so beautifully in this chapter. A few other funny things maybe that some of our viewers can jump in on is like whether or not pineapple belongs on pizza. These are hard-hitting questions.
I think it does.
I'm a bit shy tonight.
Wait, Shane, what do you think?
Me?
Yeah,
I love pineapple on pizza. Love it.
Okay.
Hawaiian is one of my favorites.
I love it. I'm so glad we're all on the same page. Another thing you also reference is the Yanni versus Laurel on this page.
Oh, yeah.
What did you hear?
So I have a funny brain. So depending on how I focus on it, I hear different ones, even if the pitch is high or low. I have a similar one where there's this optical illusion of the shadow of a woman with her leg out spinning. And apparently if you're more left-brained, you see it spinning this way, or right-brained. I see it spin one way and then the other way and then the other way and then the other way.
Me too, exactly. Yeah, I was talking about all these little references before the show began with Shane, and I was telling him all about these ones, and I was like, oh my God, this like it just brought so many like memories for me and little memes, so to speak, that I've seen on the internet. So which I think really like supports your chapter here with how easy it is to see different perspectives when you really try. So I think it was really tied in really, really well. And I guess like another perspective, I'm not sure, but like I'm really interested in Korean culture. And so when I was studying, I realized that for them, Christmas and New Year's is kind of like swapped for them as opposed to our West. And I was like, this is kind of like jogged my memory as well of like how different things are on other parts of the world. And so for those listening, I guess if you don't already know, in Korea, Christmas is usually spent with your friends and New Year's is usually spent with your family. Whereas in Australian culture, usually it's the other way around. So that's another little perspective. That's something that I've never really like forgotten about, is that at different holidays and different times of the year is always kind of different depending on where you are in the world. So I don't know, and it just kind of like highlighted all these different things, and I think this particular chapter was definitely one of my favorites. So
thank you, appreciate you. Yeah,
absolutely. Another little thing was another thing when you like look at stuff and like you can never unsee it. I love this particular picture of you with your glasses and your I don't know if you know about this one, but I'm currently studying graphic design, and one of the famous logos with this illusion is the FedEx logo. And you can never unsee between the E and the X, there's a nice little arrow that kind of signifies movement in the logo. And I have never been able to unsee it. Every time I see a FedEx truck, I'm like, oh, as if like all these years I've just never been able to see it. And now whenever I see it, it's the first thing that I see. So I think that kind of like jogged my memory in this particular chapter. So I don't know. You just tied it in so really well. Another quote, so to speak, was you say, "I like playing with zooming in and out. It's exciting and humbling." And this was like kind of a really introspective chapter about our part in this massive, crazy universe that we live in. And I think that's really good because comparatively speaking, sometimes when things we worry about little lives and everything in them, and you have to kind of like pull yourself out and be like, I'm literally this like energetic meat sack sitting on a floating rock in the middle of nowhere. It kind of like puts you into perspective. But I think later in the chapter, you also kind of like tie it in really well with a balance of things, because if you go too far out, you get a little bit, it's very overwhelming. But if you go too far in, like it's the same way around kind of thing. So a particular quote really stuck out with me, and I'm so glad that I'm just so glad that I got to read this book. I think it was just really, really insightful. Really
Thank you. Super appreciate it. Because some people read it and they're like, nah, so it's nice when people like the book.
Absolutely. I found it so enjoyable.
These crazy people. It's not me.
Yeah.
One little last funny question. In this particular, what is it? Which chapter is it? I think it is What Makes Me a Me. Is you talk about the experience where at one of your I think it's, what did you call it? You draw at your conventions? No, it's not conventions. Sorry, what did you say?
I think that one is just a workshop.
A workshop, is it? Oh, okay, yes. You talk about how you were asked the question of if you could be an animal, what would it be? And you go through all these amazing different options, and you kind of come to the conclusion that you're a rat because you were born in the year of the rat, and I'm born in the year of the rat. And the reasons as to why you say you are a rat, especially, I forget how you say, I was born the year of the rats. Chewing things helps me self-regulate. I'm playful, alert, and observant. And I'm an invasive species. And I was just like, that is so funny. And so, like, hits the nail on the head. I was just like, that's gold. I love it. And it's
that was a little in joke because my publisher is Indigenous, and that was something we talked about a lot, is having these little jabs in there of, it's like, this is my home, this is where I live, but we invaded here and came on ships, and it's a lot like rats. Speaking of, I currently have rats I have a trumpet vine along my wall, and I know a lot of people don't like rats, but the rats we have here are very cute, and they actually come and they hold the flowers and they go and then run away, and they're really, really cute. My cat sits there watching them going, I'm not using rat in a derogatory negative sense. It's like I have fond. They're just another creature, like any other.
Not they're here kind of thing. Yeah. I do want to ask Shane, if you could be any animal, what would you be?
Any animal? Oh,
yeah.
That's right. Oh no, any animal. Oh. Maybe a hippo, because everyone's scared of them and they'll leave me alone.
Oh my gosh.
There's a hippo in here.
Yes.
On the way.
On the same page. Yeah, you go on to say maybe.
That.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Hippos are pretty cool.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if
they
I
can
were
swim so fast, they don't look like they should be able to. But they can swim so fast.
They're deceptive. Yeah, absolutely.
What about you, Aiden? What animal would you be?
I've always loved the idea of whales. They always seem so exactly, literally. Yeah, that's what.
Oh yeah, I just did the noise.
I don't know.
Purpose, of course, yeah.
Always been captivated by whales and how big they are, but how gentle they seem to be. So I really like that. As someone who's like 5 foot, I'd love to see what it's like to be someone of size and big, and big in the you know what I mean? Like bigger than I actually am, kind of thing. Yeah. But But otherwise, like these were some just some of my like highlights of the book. And I guess we're kind of like nearing the end of the show. So I wanted to like ask a few wrap-up questions. Post book, I know that you are having a bit of a spell, having a little bit of an unwind, rightfully deserved. This is an amazing piece of work that I think you should be absolutely super stoked with and really proud of. But are there any other projects on the horizon that you're entertaining the idea of?
I've got a few. I can't talk about them all. One I can talk about is my first academic piece that I'm writing, which is currently out for peer review. That's for a ComX journal. And that was so hard to write. Oh my gosh. Ugh. I don't know that I'll ever do a PhD. I just thought I'd give that a go and see what that was like. And it was very hard. So yeah, but that'll be turned into a comic and be published at the end of the year in an anthology with lots of other comic pieces. So that's cool.
Cool.
I guess going to the US is kind of my next big thing. And then once that's all done, I will then move on to other projects.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so exciting. I guess this might answer my question already, but I guess if you've already got the US coming up, are there any other like conventions? I know you mentioned that you like going to zine markets and stuff like that, and there's an abundance in Melbourne, so I've heard.
Yes.
Are there any that you're?
Yes, I'll be at the Festival of the Photocopier, which is on this weekend. I'll be at I think it's the Meat Market in North Melbourne on Saturday the 10th from 12 till 5. So there'll be heaps of different comics and zine makers there selling their wares, and I'll be there with zines and my book. And it's free entry, so anyone can come in and browse and stuff. So that'll be happening. Other than that, I don't have anything else locked in just yet.
Yeah, fair enough. That's exciting. That's super exciting. I'm so glad that you're still doing like, the smaller the smaller meet and greets at the local events, because those kind of things are definitely a hidden gem. And I know that Melbourne has just so many of them, and it's on my radar to come and visit one day, that's for sure. But this is kind of like, it kind of changes pace with this particular question that I'm about to ask. But it's, I guess, for some of the viewers that are watching tonight, and maybe people who are just starting their journey, what is something that you wished someone would have told you when you first started creating Eventually Everything Connects?
I'm laughing because I did get told this, but I didn't believe people. So when I first started making this, like at the first comic art workshop, when I was talking people through my book and stuff, they were like, how long do you think it'll take you to make? And I said, a year. It'll take a year. And people were like, but it usually takes a little bit longer than that, even for a shorter work. And I was like, no, I'm going to smash it out. Yeah, I'm going to make it. And I would just say that if your big graphic novel takes under 10 years, you've done a great job.
Yeah,
that's a good rule of thumb, because like books and publishing take time. They take as long as they're going to take. People have lives, people have jobs. A lot of people who make books really quickly are very rich. That's another thing. For people who have jobs and children or responsibilities, things just take a lot longer. And give yourself a break. Have some compassion. Talk to other makers, get a realistic picture of how long things take, and just don't give up, So yeah.
Absolutely.
I was actually told it was going to take longer, but I just didn't believe them, and I just should have.
Hindsight's a bitch, ain't it? Having said all that, obviously, I mean, this in itself is a massive achievement. But do you have like an ultimate, like, overarching goal, like a comic goal of yours? Like, is there something that you're still reaching for? Like,
look, I just love making. So for me, it's about being able to continue my practice going forward and just have that kind of sustained, long practice of making. and, you know, getting better at spelling as I do it. Yeah, I do have a bucket list thing. Like I would love, and like maybe with this book, maybe not with this book, but I'd love to go to Angoulême, which is the ComX fair in France. I'd love, that's just on my bucket list. Like I just love to go there and talk comics or sell my comic or something like that, because there's just so many great artists there and great works that have you know, come and gone through there, that's kind of a bucket list thing for me. I'd like to make more books. I'd like to keep making but yeah, I'm kind of a person that responds to opportunities and kind of emergent things. So I'm kind of, given that I'm in a rest period, I'm not quite sure what will come. I know something will come, but I'm you know, letting it emerge. Yeah,
as it will. Cool. And I think that's super exciting. I think that's a really exciting stage to be in as well. I think, yeah, if anything, it exceeds your expectations, if anything. So I'm excited for you. But I mean, honestly, Sarah, this has been such a joy having you on the show. And I think it's definitely set a fantastic tone for this year's season. But I really want to know, perhaps, what you think the Aussie indie comic scene needs more of. If there's anything that it needs more of, what would it be?
Oh gosh, does it need more of something? I feel like we have a really strong and healthy indie comic scene, honestly. And like particularly going to this is something I will say. Having taken my book out of comics into kind of a non-fiction mainstream publishing stream, it has made me really appreciate how strong the culture is for comics makers in Australia. There are lots of different groups, different cohorts and things, but there is just such a good amount of I would say goodwill and support. And part of it is because it's small. But I feel like that's really valuable. Like and what I'd love to see is just more people meeting more people and connecting with more people around the kind of comics opportunities and the knowledge that is being built. And particularly now, I feel like there's a bit of an upswell in comics making and comics interest in the kind of broader cultural sphere in Australia. And I just really hope that more comics makers can kind of work together to understand how things work, you know, support each other's work, you know, get out there and just enjoy making and sharing work. You know, even if it's tiny little printed zines that you printed on the, you know, printer at the library that you made and you're 11 years old. It's like, you know, just making a little zine and swapping it with someone. Like that's the great stuff, you know? Yeah.
Very well. Amazing. Oh, I'm so glad. And it's been such a joy having you on the show. My final question I have for you, where can we find this beauty? Where can we head to?
So it is in almost all good bookstores. Like that is the power of having a bigger publisher make your book, is it is available. So yeah, most bookstores that you go to will have it. It's always good to buy locally. So I'd always suggest find your local bookstore, buy it from them to support local business, because they're really important to the ecosystem of comics and bookmakers. But you can also go to my website, which is sarahthefirth.com. And I have links to where you can buy the book there. You can buy it from me. You can buy it from me at the Sticky Festival of the Photocopier on Saturday if you're in Melbourne. And you can also follow me on social media. My handle is Sarah the Firth on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, X and all that. And I've posted random stuff online that you can see.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, Sarah, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. Those are all my questions. But again, thank you so much for sharing a little piece of your world with us, because it was an absolute joy to read. And thank you again for coming on the show and talking a little bit more in depth about it.
Thank you so much for running the show. It's so wonderful to have you, you know, talking with comics makers and sharing the work that's being done and talking about it. So thank you for doing a great service.
Yeah, bless. No, it's been our pleasure, honestly. But yeah, that's all from me. Shane, were there any other final announcements, thoughts?
I'm just going to be really cheeky and go with the presents again because we have got 19 hours left, people. This is my little love letter to Australian comics, where I get people who sometimes couldn't publish their own stuff, or they couldn't publish a particular story or whatever. Then I help them put them in this anthology and help them get printed so they can hold it in their hands for the first time. Because when I made my first comic, that was an awesome feeling of holding it in my hands for the first time. So I try to share that feeling through this book. So yes, please support it. That would be all.
Fantastic. Well, without further ado, thank you so much for watching, everyone. We will be back in another fortnight with our next guest, who is Shane?
Yes, Aaron Mack.
Yes.
He is part of ComX Studio. He's just joined ComX Studio, and he and his brother and a team of people are bringing out a book called Ben Sullivan. I should throw his name in that circle. Are bringing out a book called Gods Amongst Men. So yes, that's what we'll be talking about with him.
Cool.
Cool. Amazing. Well, thanks again to everyone watching, and thank you again to the amazing Sarah Firth. Thank you so much for being on board today. No worries at all. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Night, everyone.
Night.
Check out comx.cx for all things ComX and find out what ComX is all about. We hope you enjoyed the show.